The following reading is from Book 4, Co-Creation of the Ringing Cedars of Russia, as we say in our bastardized language. Russia. These books were written by Vladimir Magri, beginning in 2005. They encapsulate the teachings to Vladimir by Anastasia and her grandfather, both of whom live in the taiga forest of Siberia. They have their own ancestry tracing back to before the Ice Age, so over 10,000 years, and they don't have anything to do with the modern world, really. They can travel in and out to there whenever they want to, but they don't really live in the modern world, that's for sure. They're from Vedic Russia, old days, and these teachings are very much the Vedic teachings from the old days of that part of the world, which is close to the North Pole, which is where the ancient gods or Hyperborean gods of the Hellenes, that's where they did live. More information on that is revealed by the Bok saga. So, let us begin. We'll be beginning with chapter 21. And chapter 21 and chapter 22 deal specifically with out-of-body travel, and also with that out-of-body travel comes the ability to travel to other worlds. And one such world is visited and witnessed. And the warning is that what has happened on this world, which is witnessed, visited and witnessed by Vladimir, because he is taken there by Anastasia, he witnesses a world which has been denuded of all vegetation and is being mined, gutted by mining machines, peopled by robotic human people, microchipped, completely plugged into an artificial intelligence technocratic system. And the warning is that this is exactly what is happening to this planet. We're being prepared. The agenda at the moment is transhumanism, which is the conversion of humanity into this artificial intelligence robotic type of humanity, as witnessed by Vladimir. And this was also written about in the Aryan Slavic Vedas, which may or may not be entirely true, but nevertheless the warning is in those books as well. So, I will begin with chapter 21 from Book 4, Co-Creation of the Ringing Cedars of Russia. Chapter 21. Where do we go in sleep? On several occasions, Anastasia's description of earthly civilizations contained references to the existence of life on other planets and in other galaxies of the universe. And I got so interested in this that while I was listening to her tale about mankind's past, I could only think about how life evolved out there on other planets. Anastasia no doubt saw my interest in her story waning and stopped talking. I was quiet too, thinking about how I could get her to tell in more specific detail about life in extraterrestrial civilizations. I could have asked her directly, of course, but she tends to get somehow distracted whenever she can't explain why she knows something others don't. And it seems to me that her desire not to stand out from other people on account of her abilities discourages her from talking about everything. I've begun noticing, for example, that she's rather shy about her inability to explain how certain phenomena work. This is in fact what happened when I asked her directly. Tell me, Anastasia, are you able to teleport yourself in space? I mean, moving your body from one place to another. Why are you asking me about that, Vladimir? First tell me specifically, yes or no. Vladimir, everybody has that kind of ability, but I am not sure I can explain to you just how natural this process is. You will only withdraw yourself from me again, saying I'm a witch. You will feel uncomfortable with me. So that means you can? I can, she answered hesitantly, her head bowed. Then give me a demonstration. Show me how it happens. Perhaps I should try to explain first. No, Anastasia, first show me. It's always more interesting to watch something than to listen, and then you can explain. Anastasia had an estranged look about her as she rose to her feet. She closed her eyes, tensed up a little, and then disappeared before my eyes. Dumbstruck, I looked around. I even felt with my hands the spot where she had just been standing. But all that was there was some trampled grass, while Anastasia was nowhere to be seen. Then I caught sight of her standing on the far side of the lake. I looked at her, speechless. Then she called out, "Shall I swim to you? Or shall I once more?" "Once more," I replied, and, taking care not to blink in case I missed anything, I began watching the figure of Anastasia standing on the other side of the small lake. All at once she vanished, simply dissolved into thin air. Not even a trace of smoke was left at the place where I had just seen her. I continued to stand there unblinkingly. "I'm here, Vladimir." Anastasia's voice sounded right beside me. Once again she was standing no more than a metre away. I found myself stepping back a little. Then I sat down on the ground, trying not to show any sense of surprise or excitement. For some reason the thought came that suddenly she might take it into her head to dissolve my body and then not assemble it afterward. Anastasia spoke first. "Only the owner of a body can fully dissolve it or split it into atoms. This is an ability available only to man, Vladimir." I realized she was going to first try to prove to me that she was man, and so as not to have her waste any time, I said, I realise that it's only given to man, but surely not to every man. Not to everyone. One must... I know what you're going to say. One must have pure thoughts. Yes, pure thoughts. And besides that, the ability to think quickly and in images, to visualize in specific detail oneself, one's body and desire, a strong will and faith in one's self. Don't explain, Anastasia. Don't waste your time trying. Tell me rather, can you move your body to any place at all? Any place? Yes, though I rarely do that. Any place can be very dangerous. Besides, there is no need to. Why move one's body? There are other ways. Why dangerous? It is essential to get an accurate picture of the place you wish to move your body to. And if you don't get an accurate picture, what can happen? Your body might be lost. How? For example, suppose you wanted to transport your body to the floor of the ocean, and the water pressure crushes it, or you suffocate, or you might wind up on a city street in front of an oncoming car, and the car hits your body and injures it. And can man also transport his body to another planet? Distance plays absolutely no role here. It will move itself to whatever place your thought dictates. After all, your thought goes to the destination first. It is also what assembles and puts together again the body that was earlier dissolved in space. If I wanted to dissolve my body, what should I be thinking about? You have to visualize all of its matter, right down to the tiniest atom, right to the nucleus, and see how the particles create an outwardly chaotic movement in the nucleus, and then mentally dissolve them in space. Then assemble them in their former sequence, in their outwardly chaotic movement in the nucleus, reproducing it accurately. It is all very simple, just the way children play with blocks. But mightn't it turn out that on another planet there wouldn't be a suitable atmosphere to breathe? That is what I am saying. It is dangerous to transport one's body without thinking it through carefully. There are a lot of things to take into account ahead of time. So that means it won't work out to go to another planet? It can. It is possible to take some of the surrounding atmosphere along too, and the body will live in that for a time. But generally, it is better not to transport one's body without a particular need for it. In most cases, it is sufficient to watch from a distance with one's ray, or transport only one's second, non-material self. Incredible! It's hard to believe that every man was once capable of doing something like that. Why do you say once? One's second human self is capable even now of moving about freely, and it does move. Only people do not assign it any specific tasks. They do not set it any goal. What kind of people does this happen with? Right now, it basically happens when a person sleeps. It is possible to do the same when one is awake, but on account of the general bustle, as well as all sorts of dogmas and various contrived problems, people are losing more and more the ability to control their own selves. They are losing the capacity for imaginative thinking. Maybe it's because it's not that interesting to travel without one's body. Why would you think that? In terms of what you feel, the final result can often be the same. Well, if the result were the same, people wouldn't go dragging their bodies around, travelling to different countries. Right now, the tourist business is pretty profitable in our world, and there's something I don't quite understand about that mysterious second self of man's. If one's body hasn't been somewhere, that means the man wasn't there either. It's just as simple and clear as that. Do not try to jump to hasty conclusions, Vladimir. I shall now present you with 3 different scenarios, and you try to tell me in which case this hypothetical person actually took a trip. Okay, go ahead. Here is the first. Imagine yourself or some other person sound asleep. He is placed on a stretcher. While still asleep, he is put on an aeroplane and taken to another country, from Moscow to Jerusalem, for example. Still sleeping, he is driven up and down the main street, taken into the main temple, and still asleep, brought back the same way and put back where he started. What do you think? Was the traveller from Moscow really in Jerusalem? Tell me the other 2 scenarios first. Fine. The second traveller went to Jerusalem all on his own, walked along the main street, spent a little time in the temple, and then went home. And the third? He left his body behind, but he had the ability to visualize everything at a distance. He walked around the city as though in a dream. He visited the temple, dropped in somewhere else, and then mentally returned to his previous activities. Now, who of the 3 was actually in Jerusalem, do you think? In the fullest sense, only one of the 3 was there. That was the one who consciously decided to make the journey and see everything for himself. Let us say that is so, but in the final analysis, what did each of them get out of the visit? Well, the first traveller didn't get anything out of it. The second was able to tell about everything he saw. As for the third, well, the third person would probably also be able to talk about it, and he might make some mistakes, since he saw everything in a dream. And a dream can be quite different from reality. But the dream as a phenomenon is also a reality. Well, yes, the dream exists as a phenomenon. Maybe it's a reality too, but what are you getting at? At the fact, which you will probably not deny, that man is always able to connect or make contact between 2 existing realities. Well, I know what you're driving at here. You want to say that it's possible to control a dream and direct it where you want. Yes. But what exactly helps that come about? It comes about with the help of the energy of thought and its ability to free any reality for penetration into images. And what then? Does it register an impression of everything that goes on in some other country, like a TV camera? Excellent! The TV camera can serve as a primitive confirmation. So, Vladimir, you have reached the conclusion that it is not always necessary to transport material bodies to feel what is happening in a faraway land? Or perhaps not always. But why did you start telling me about this? Are you trying to prove something? I realised that when you began talking about other worlds, that you would demand or ask that I show them to you. I want to carry out your request without putting your body at risk. You guessed everything right, Anastasia. I really was going to ask you about that. So there's life on other planets after all? Gosh, it'd be jolly interesting to see them. Which planet would you like to visit? What? Are there a lot of them? Inhabited, I mean? There are a great many, though none more interesting than the Earth. But still, what kind of life is there on the others? And how did it originate? When the Earth appeared as a divine co-creation, many of the elements of the universe were eager to repeat this marvellous creation. They wanted to create their own on other worlds, using planets which in their opinion were suitable. They began creating them, but nobody could create life in a harmony anything like that of the Earth. There is in the universe, for example, a planet where ants predominate over everything. There are a great number of ants on it. The ants devour other life forms. When there is nothing left for them to eat, they turn to eating each other and die. And the element that created this kind of life is trying to recreate it anew, but it certainly is not turning out any better. Nobody has been able to bring all the elements together in harmony. There are also planets where the elements have tried, and are still trying, to create a vegetative world similar to the Earth, and they are creating it. Those planets are growing trees, grass and bushes, but each time their creations reach full maturity, they die. None of the elements of the universe has been able to guess the secret of reproduction. They are like man today. After all, man today has created a lot of artificial things all on its own, but not one of his creations can reproduce itself. They break down, rot away, decay, and demand constant maintenance. The majority of people on the earth have been turned into slaves of their own creations. Only the creations of God are capable of reproducing themselves and living in harmony in all their great diversity. But are there planets in the universe, Anastasia, where beings are involved in technology the way man is? Yes, there are, Vladimir. There is a planet that has 6 times the Earth's volume and has beings outwardly similar to man. Their technology is artificial and has been perfected far beyond the technology of our Earth. Life on this planet was created by an element of the universe which believes itself to be on a par with God and is striving for predominance over God's creations. Tell me, are they the ones who have come to the Earth in their spaceships, the flying saucers we see? Yes, they have tried to make contact with Earth people on a number of occasions. But for the Earth, their contacts... No, wait. Is there any way you can take me or my second self to that planet for a visit? Yes, I can. Then take me there. After that, Anastasia asked me to lie down on the ground and relax. Telling me to spread out my arms to the sides, she placed one of her hands in mine, and in a short time I began to doze off into something similar to sleep. I say something similar, as this dozing off was most unusual. First, my body felt more and more relaxed. I couldn't feel my body any more, though I could see and hear everything around me perfectly well. The singing of the birds, the rustling of the leaves. Then I closed my eyes and sank into a sleep, or divided myself, as Anastasia would put it. But to this day I am not in a position to say what happened to me next or how. If it is to be assumed that with Anastasia's help I fell asleep and had a dream, the fullness of my sensations and the clarity of my awareness of everything I saw can in no way be compared with any human dream. Chapter 22. Other Worlds. I saw another world, another planet. I was able to remember everything that went on there in clear detail. Yet to this day, I still have the lingering feeling in my consciousness that beholding anything like that is an impossibility. Think about it. My mind and consciousness tell me it's impossible. And yet they, the visions, the pictures, remain with me to this day, and now I shall try and describe them to you. I stood on ground similar to what we have on the earth. There was absolutely no vegetation around me. I say stood, but whether I can actually say that, it's hard to tell. I didn't have any legs or arms. I didn't even have a body. And yet, at the same time, it seemed I could feel my steps. I could feel the rocky, uneven surface through the soles of my feet. All around, as far as the eye could see, above the soil, rose metallic machines, both egg-shaped ones and square or cube-like machines. I use the word machines because the one closest to me gave off a kind of soft whirring sound. From each of these machines, a plethora of hoses of different diameters went down into the ground. Some of these hoses were slightly quivering, as though something was being sucked up through them from the ground, while others were in a motionless state. No living beings were in sight. All at once I saw a panel on the side of one of these strange devices open, and out floated, rather slowly, a kind of disc, similar in shape to a discus thrown by athletes, only much larger, about 45 metres in diameter. It hovered in the air and then started to rotate. After a brief descent, it took off and flew completely noiselessly overhead. Other devices a little further away did the same, and several more discs flew after the first one after the other, right over my head. And then once again there was just still and empty space, except for the whirring and crackling of the strange devices. The whole picture aroused my interest, but even more, its incredible lifelessness was frightening. Do not be afraid of anything, Vladimir. All at once I caught the sound of Anastasia's voice, which comforted me no end. Where are you, Anastasia? I inquired. Right here beside you. We are invisible, Vladimir. Present here are our feelings, sensations, mind, and all our other invisible forms of energy. We are here without our material bodies. Nobody can do anything to us. The only thing we need to be wary of is ourselves and the consequences of our own sensations. What kind of consequences might there be? Psychological consequences, like temporarily going out of one's mind. Going out of one's mind? Yes, but only temporarily. For a month or two it can happen. The vision of other planets may stir up man's mind and consciousness. But you need not be afraid. You are not threatened by this. You will pull through, and there is nothing to be afraid of. Believe me, Vladimir, you are indeed here, but not as far as they are concerned. At the moment we are invisible and can go and see whatever we wish to. I'm not afraid. Only you'd better tell me, Anastasia, what are those whirring machines all around us? What are they for? Each of those egg-shaped machines is a factory. They are the ones that produce the flying saucers that are of such interest to you. And who maintains or controls these factories? No one. They are programmed in advance to make a particular product. Through those pipes going down into the ground, they suck up the raw material they need in the required amounts. The forging and pressing, and then the assembly, all take place in small compartments inside, and then the fully formed product comes out. This factory is much more efficient than any on the earth. There is practically no waste from this process. There is no need to transport raw material from distant places. There is no need to ship individual component parts to the assembly point. The whole manufacturing process is concentrated in one place. Amazing! We should have a gizmo like that. And who controls the new flying saucers? I noticed they were all flying in the same direction. Nobody controls them. They fly all by themselves to a storage depot. Incredible! Just like a living being. But this by itself represents nothing incredible, even in terms of earthly technology. After all, the Earth also has pilotless planes and rockets. Just the same, they are controlled by people on the Earth. But the Earth, for a long time, has also had rockets which are pre-programmed for a specific target. All one has to do is push the launch button, and the rocket fires itself and heads for a predetermined target. Maybe so. And really, what was there here that was so surprising? If you really think about it, there is not that much to be surprised at. Only by comparison with the technology we have on the Earth, this is far more advanced. These factories, Vladimir, are multifunctional. They can manufacture a great deal, from food products to powerful weapons. And what are their food products made of? Nothing grows here after all. Everything comes from deep in the ground. Machines take in all the juices they need through the pipes and press them into granules. These granules will contain all the substances needed to sustain bodily life. What does this gizmo itself feed on? Who supplies it with electrical power? I don't see any wires. It produces the energy it needs all on its own, using everything from the environment. Wow, just look how smart it is. Smarter than man. It is by no means smarter than man, Vladimir. It is simply a machine. It is subject to its assigned program and is very easy to reprogram. Would you like me to show you how it is done? Oh, go ahead. Let us move a little closer to it. We stood at about a meter's distance from the huge device, which was the size of a 9-story building. The crackling sound became more distinct. An army of flexible tentacle pipes reached into the ground, shaking. The surface of the device's covering wasn't entirely smooth. I caught sight of a circular area, approximately a metre in diameter, densely covered with small wires sticking out like hairs. They were quivering, each one individually. This is the antenna for the scanning apparatus. It picks up the brain's energy impulses, which it uses to compile a program capable of carrying out an assigned task. If your brain can visualize a particular object, the machine should be able to manufacture it. Any object? Any that you can picture in detail, as though constructing it with your thoughts. And any kind of car? Of course. And can I try it right now? Yes. Move closer to the receiver and start by mentally instructing its antenna to turn all its receptor wires toward you. Directly that happens, begin picturing what you desire. I stood close to the wiry antenna. Burning with curiosity, I mentally desired, as Anastasia had said, to have all its wires pay heed to me. At first they turned in my direction, then all of them, with a slight trembling, directed their tips to my invisible head and stayed still. Now I had to visualize a particular object. For some reason I began picturing a Model 7 Ziguli, the car I had in Novosibirsk. I tried picturing everything in as much detail as I could. The window glass and the bonnet, the bumper, the colour, and even the license plate. I took a long time with the visualization. When I got tired of it, I moved away from the antenna. The huge machine started whirring more briskly. We must wait, explained Anastasia. Now it is assembling the unfinished product it was working on and compiling a program for carrying out your design. Will we have to wait long? I do not think so. We went over to look at some of the other machines. Presently, as I was examining the multicoloured rocks underfoot, I heard Anastasia's voice announcing, I think the manufacture of the object you pictured in your mind is complete. Let us take a look and see how it coped with the task. We went back to the first machine and began waiting. After a little while its panel opened and out came a Ziguli. It rolled down a smooth ramp to the ground. But this freak standing in front of me had nothing on the beautiful automobile I knew back on the earth. First, it had only one door, one on the driver's side. In place of the back seats, there were only some coils of wire and pieces of rubber. I walked, or rather moved, around the object. It was definitely not something you could call a motor car. Two wheels were missing from the passenger side, nor was there any bumper or license plate at the front. The bonnet did not look as though it would open. It seemed to be made of a single piece with the chassis. In sum, this unique factory had produced not a car, but some kind of narwhal of indeterminate function. And I said, "Gord, is that the best this alien factory can come up with? If this had happened on Earth, they'd have sacked all the designers and engineers." Anastasia burst out laughing in response, and I heard her voice say, "Of course they might have been let go, but in this case the chief designer is you, Vladimir, and what you see is a product of your designing. I wanted a standard modern automobile, but what has this machine spit out? Wanting is not enough. You have to picture everything down to the minutest detail. You did not even include any passenger doors in your visualization. You only thought of the one door for yourself, and you pictured wheels only on your side of the car. You neglected to put in wheels on the other side, and I think you completely forgot about the motor." Completely forgot. Which means there is no motor in your design. So, why blame the manufacturer when you yourself gave it an incomplete program to work with? All at once I saw or sensed the approach of 3 flying machines heading in our direction. "Got to get out of here," the thought flashed across my mind. But then I heard Anastasia's calming voice. "They will not notice us or sense us in any way, Vladimir. I have received word about a disruption in the work of one of their factories, and now they are probably coming to investigate. We shall have the opportunity to quietly observe some of the living inhabitants of this planet." Out of the 3 small flying machines stepped 5 aliens. They were very similar in appearance to Earthlings. Not just similar, but everything about them suggested Earthlings. They were well built, no slouching shoulders. Their athletic bodies had their handsome heads straight and proud, and they even had hair on their heads and eyebrows on their faces, and one of them sported a neatly trimmed moustache. They were dressed in thin, multicoloured one-piece outfits that tightly covered their whole body. The aliens walked over to the car produced by their factory, or more accurately, to the semblance of an earthly car. They stood silently beside it, observing, without emotion. They are no doubt having one hell of a time trying to figure this one out, I thought. The alien, who appeared to be the youngest, with light brown hair, detached himself from the others. He went up to the door of the car and tried to open it, but the door refused to budge. The lock was probably jammed. The rest of his actions seemed very earthly, which gave me no small comfort. The brown-haired alien banged his hand on the door in the area of the lock, then tried pulling it harder this time, and the door opened. He sat down in the driver's seat, put his hands on the steering wheel, and began to carefully examine dashboard instruments. Good lad, I thought, a clever fellow. And in confirmation of my appraisal, I heard Anastasia say, "This is a very top-ranked scientist by their standards, Vladimir. His thought works quickly and logically in a technical orientation. Besides, he is studying how beings live on several other planets, including the Earth. He even has an Earth-like name, Arkan." But why does his face show no surprise at finding that one of their factories made something anomalous? The inhabitants of this planet have almost no feelings or emotions. Their minds work evenly and logically, with no giving in to emotional outbursts or departures from set goals. The young alien climbed out of the car, uttering sounds reminiscent of Morse code. An older alien stepped forward and stood by the worry antenna where I had positioned myself earlier. Then they all climbed back into their flying machines and took off. The factory which had manufactured the car according to my design began whirring again. Its tentacle pipes began pulling themselves up from the ground and redirecting themselves toward a nearby automated factory of the same type, from which tentacle pipes also extended. When all their tentacles joined together, Anastasia said, "You see, they have reprogrammed it to self-destruct. All the components of the factory where the disruptions occurred will now be remolded by the other factory and used in production." And I began feeling a trifle sorry for the robot factory, which had helped me to create, albeit unsuccessfully, an Earth car. But there was absolutely nothing I could do about it. "Vladimir, would you like to take a look at the everyday life of the planet's inhabitants?" Anastasia offered. "Oh yes, of course." We found ourselves overlooking one of the cities or settlements of the huge planet. Our aerial view afforded us the following picture. As far as the eye could see, the whole populated area consisted of a great many cylindrical installations, something like our modern skyscrapers, set in a large number of circles. In the centre of each circle were low-rise structures somewhat reminiscent of trees on the Earth. Even their sensor leaves were green. And Anastasia confirmed that these artificial structures draw up from the ground all the components of substances needed for sustenance, which are then dispatched through special pipes into the homes of every inhabitant of this particular world. Not only that, but they maintain the requisite atmosphere for the planet. When Anastasia suggested paying a visit to one of the apartments, I asked, "Can we visit the flat of that brown-haired alien who sat in my car?" "Yes," she replied. "At this moment, he will be just getting home from work." We found ourselves almost at the very top of one of the cylindrical skyscrapers. There was absolutely no windows in this alien apartment block. The circular walls were marked off into dull-coloured squares. Near the bottom of each square was a raisable door, the kind you might find on our modern garages. Now and then one of the doors would open, and out would come a small flying machine similar to the ones we had seen near the automated factory, and fly off on its own. It turned out that there was a small garage for one of these machines located below each apartment in the high-rise. There were no lifts or doors in the building. Each flat had its own entrance directly from the garage. And as it turned out, every inhabitant of the planet acquired an apartment like this once he reached a certain age. At first I didn't particularly take to the flat itself. Upon finding ourselves in the brown-haired man's flat just after he arrived home, my initial impression was one of surprise at its simplicity and apparent lack of amenities. The room, approximately 30 square metres in area, was completely barren. It wasn't just that there were no windows or partitions, there wasn't even the barest modicum of furniture. The smooth, pale walls bore not a single painting or shelf by way of decoration. "Maybe he's just got this flat recently?" I asked Anastasia. "Arkan has been living here for 20 years now. His apartment has everything necessary for relaxation, entertainment and work. All the necessary components are built into the walls. You shall presently see for yourself." Indeed, no sooner had the brown-haired alien come up from his garage below than the ceiling and the walls of the room began to glow with a soft light. Arkan turned to face the wall next to the entrance, placed the palm of his hand on the surface and uttered a sound. A panel on the wall lit up. Anastasia gave a running commentary on everything that was taking place in the apartment. "Right now, the computer is identifying the apartment's owner by the lines of his hand and his eye scan. Now it is greeting him and letting him know how long he has been gone, as well as the need to check his physical condition. You see, Vladimir, Arkan has put his other hand up to the console and is letting out a deep sigh so that the computer can check his physical condition. Now the checkup is complete and a message has appeared on the screen telling him he needs to take a nutrient mixture. It is asking him what he intends to do over the next 3 hours. This is important for the computer to know in order to prepare an appropriate mixture. Now Arkan is asking for a mixture optimized to boost his mental activity for the next 3 hours, after which he intends to go to sleep. The computer is suggesting that he not engage in any strenuous mental activity over a 3-hour period. Instead, it is recommending he take a solution calculated to sustain work activity for a period of 2 hours and 16 minutes. Arkan has agreed to the computer's recommendation. At that point, a small niche opened up in the wall, from which Arkan seized hold of a flexible pipe. Putting the end of the hose to his mouth, he took a drink, or a bite to eat, from the hose and then went over to the opposite wall. The niche holding the pipe closed up, the screen panel dimmed, and the wall where the alien had just been standing once more became smooth and monochrome. Wow, I thought, with this technology you can do away with the kitchen and all its equipment and dishes and furniture. Especially you can do away with clean-up, and even with a wife who knows how to make a good meal. No need to go to the store. Besides, at one fell swoop the computer can check your health, prepare the food you require, and make all sorts of recommendations. I wonder how much a computer would cost back on the earth. And immediately I heard Anastasia say, "As for expenditures, it is less expensive to equip each apartment with such a device than to load kitchens down with furniture and a whole lot of appliances for food preparation. They are much more rational than Earthlings, all told. But in fact there is much more rationality on the Earth than here." I didn't pay much attention to Anastasia's last remark. I was too absorbed in watching Arkan's actions. He went on giving voice commands, and the following events ensued in the room. From a section of the wall, all at once an armchair began to inflate. Then beside the chair another little niche opened, from which a small table emerged, along with some kind of semi-transparent container resembling a laboratory flask. On the opposite wall of the room, a large screen lit up, about 1.5 to 2 metres in diagonal. The screen showed a beautiful woman in a slinky bodysuit, seated in a comfortable chair. The woman was holding a container in her hand similar to the one on the table beside Arkan. The image of the woman on the screen was three-dimensional and much sharper than our TV sets. It seemed as though she were not on a screen, but sitting right there in the room. Anastasia explained that Arkan and the woman sitting opposite him were forming a child together. The inhabitants of this planet do not have sufficient strength of feeling to enter into sexual relations like people on the Earth. Outwardly, their bodies are no different, but the absence of feelings does not allow them to produce offspring the way people do on the Earth. It is their own cells and hormones that are contained in the test tubes, you see. Men and women visualize what they would like their future child to look like. They mentally instill in him the information they themselves contain and discuss his future activity. This process lasts approximately 3 years in Earth time. Once they determine that the process of the child's formation is complete, they join the contents of the two containers together in a special laboratory. The child is produced and raised in a special nursery school until he comes of age. Then, as a mature member of the community, he is offered an apartment and assigned to the personnel roster of one of the work groups. Arkan alternated his gaze between the woman on the screen and the liquid in the little sealed container. All at once the wall screen dimmed, but the alien remained seated in his chair, his eyes fixed on the container on the table in front of him, holding a particle of his future child. Now the opposite wall was flashing with red squares. The alien turned sideways, his hands shielding his eyes from the flashing lights, and inclined his head even closer to his container. New illuminated squares and triangles began flashing alarmingly from the ceiling. The wake time allotted Arkan by the computer has expired. Now the computer is insistently reminding him of the need for sleep, Anastasia explained. But the alien bent his head down even closer to his flask, clasping it in his hands. The lights on the walls and the ceiling stopped flashing. The room began filling with some kind of steam-like gas. Anastasia's voice remarked, "Now the computer is using gas to put Arkan to sleep." The alien's head began slowly drooping toward the table, and soon it was resting on it, his eyes closed. The armchair began emerging even further out of the wall and transforming itself into a bed. Then the bed chair began rocking from side to side, and the body of the already sleeping alien fell back into a comfortable cradle. Arkan slept, clasping the little container in his hands to his chest. There is so much more to tell about the advanced technological features not only of the apartment, but on the huge planet as a whole. According to Anastasia, the community of people inhabiting it have no fear of any invasion from the outside. Not only that, but with the help of their technical achievements, they are capable of destroying life on any other planet in the universe. Any except the Earth. Why? I asked. Does that mean our rockets and weapons are capable of repelling an attack? And Anastasia replied, Earth rockets pose no threat to them, Vladimir. The civilization on this planet has long been acquainted with all the derivatives of explosion. They also are familiar with implosion. What does that mean? Implosion. Scientists on the Earth know that when two or more substances which have come together in an instantaneous reaction expand, an explosion occurs. But there is a different reaction from contact between two substances. Take a gaseous substance, about a cubic kilometre or more in size, capable of instantaneously compressing itself to the size of a speck, thereby becoming a super hard material. Imagine a grenade or a rocket exploding in such a cloud, but another force simultaneously acting against the explosion. An implosion will take place at the same time, and all you will hear then is a clapping sound, and everything that was in that cloud will be transformed into a stone the size of a speck. All the rockets on Earth will not overcome the pall of gaseous clouds. In the history of the Earth there have been two comings or invasions on their part. Now they are preparing for a third. They think a favourable moment for that is once more approaching. That means nothing can stop them if there are no weapons on Earth stronger than theirs, says Vladimir. Ah, but man does have a weapon. It is known as man's thought. Even I alone could turn about half of their weapons into dust and scatter them through the universe. And if I could find some helpers, then together we would be able to liquidate all their weapons. The only thing is, the majority of people on the Earth, and almost all the governments on the Earth, would consider their invasion a blessing. But how could it happen that everyone took an invasion and attack for a blessing? You will see in a moment. Here, take a look at the centre, which is preparing an invasion force to take over the continents of the Earth. Chapter 23. The Invasion Centre. Of course, I was eager to see the interplanetary super technology that was capable of conquering the whole planet. But what my eyes actually saw, I think our Russian, American and other military strategists have absolutely no idea of the kind of weapons that could so easily be used to take over the territories they are supposedly protecting. And you, dear readers, before you read on, try to imagine how an alien centre preparing for an invasion of the Earth might be equipped, and then look and see what it looks like in reality. I shall now attempt to describe its outward appearance. A huge square room. Along each of the four walls there is a life-size replica of the interiors of our own native parliaments on Earth. Along one wall is the State Duma, that's the Russian, along with the office of our president in the Kremlin. On the opposite wall I could see the interiors of the American Congress and the office of the American president in the White House. Along the other two walls were the offices of various state political institutions in some of the Asian countries, judging by their appearance. In the parliamentary seats were sitting our earthling deputies, congressmen and presidents. First of all, I began examining our own Russian deputies. They were an exact copy of the familiar faces I had seen on TV. Only here they were sitting motionless, like mummies. It is difficult to say what they were made of. Maybe they were dolls, holograms, or robots, or maybe even something else. In the middle of the huge hall was a raised platform on which were sitting approximately 50 aliens. They were dressed not in their usual bodysuits, but in our earthly clothing, and were listening to a speaker standing in front of them, probably their chief instructor or some other official. Anastasia explained that we were observing one of the landing parties, currently engaged in a routine class session on preparing for interaction with earthly governments. They have been studying the most common earth languages and the way people behave in various situations. They are paying special attention to the preparation for contact with governments and legislative bodies, which they hope to influence the whole population of the earth. They have mastered conversational speech without too much difficulty, but in the absence of certain feelings capable of provoking outward emotions, they are finding it rather hard to mimic Earth people's gestures. And with their rationalistic way of thinking, they cannot see any logic in earthly governmental systems. Despite their drawing upon the best minds and the most modern technology of their civilization, they have still been unable to guess, for example, the secret of why, in spite of the computer technology already available on the Earth, and the multitude of specific scientific institutions, our national legislative bodies are still not provided with information about the consequences of the decisions they make. They are convinced that were there a specific analysis centre, a think tank in other words, for which everything requisite is already available on the Earth, it would be possible to visualise almost perfectly the social consequences of all parliamentary decisions. Instead, every legislator, every member of an earthly government, is obliged to make decisions independently. Not having sufficient information at their fingertips, each member of a government is obliged to fulfil the function of a powerful analysis centre and calculate the consequences not only of his own actions but also those of his colleagues, enemies and friends. Another very mysterious question, which the aliens have not been able to guess the answer to, is why Earthlings do not define any goal to be attained. They aspire to something, but to what? That remains a deep secret. Nevertheless, on the basis of the current requirements of earthly societies, the aliens have prepared a plan to invade Earth's continents. They will begin by making proposals to Earthlings through the governments of various countries, and their proposals will be accepted with great enthusiasm. When I asked Anastasia why she was so confident in governmental acceptance of the proposals, she replied as follows: "This is what their analysis centre has determined. The conclusions of the centre are correct. Given the level of conscious awareness of most Earthlings today, they will take the aliens' proposal as a supreme manifestation of the humanity of the mind of the universe." And what kind of proposals are they? They are monstrous, Vladimir. It is difficult for me even to talk about them. Tell me at least the main points. It would be interesting, after all, to know just what these monstrous proposals are that would be enthusiastically welcomed on the Earth I live on, and you too. The aliens first plan to land a small party, 3 of their flying machines, on Russian territory. They will tell the military personnel which surround them of their desire to meet with government circles to talk about mutual cooperation. They will present themselves to the soldiers as representatives of the supreme mind of the universe and give them a demonstration of their superior technology. After military, scientific and government circles have held internal consultations, approximately 14 days later the aliens will be invited to concretise their proposals, but first they will have to undergo a medical examination to make sure it is safe to communicate with them. The aliens will agree to the medical examination and then put their proposals in writing as well as on video. The text will be laid out in a form very similar to our modern official documents and will be characterised by extreme simplicity. The text will read something like this: "We, the representatives of an extraterrestrial civilization, having achieved the ultimate level of technological development by comparison with other intelligent inhabitants of the universe, do hereby consider Earth people our brothers in reason. We are prepared to share our knowledge with societies on the Earth in various branches of science and social structure and offer them our technology. We ask you to consider our proposals and select the ones most suitable for improving the life of every member of your society." Then will follow a whole series of concrete proposals, the substance of which amounts to this: the visitors offer to share their technology in providing each citizen of the country with nutrient mixture and rapid construction of housing for everyone who has reached the age of maturity. This is the same kind of housing you have already seen, Vladimir, only with not quite so many functions. As an example, they will introduce their mini factories into the country. They will integrate their alien factories with existing Earth factories, but in 5 years all Earth technologies will be discarded and replaced by technologically more advanced counterparts. A job will be guaranteed for all who wish to have one. Not only that, but every single inhabitant of the Earth will be required to contribute a certain minimum amount of work toward maintaining the technological devices. A nation that signs a treaty with the visitors will be completely protected from military invasion by any other nation. In a society which embraces the new social order and its technologically supported lifestyle, there will be no crime. In the apartments provided you, everything you need will react only to your voice commands, identified by tones inherent only in your voice. Every day before you take in food, the computers in your apartments will scan your eyes, breath and other parameters to determine your physical health and prescribe the corresponding food mixture composition. Each computer installed in an individual apartment will be linked with the main computer, which will thereby be able to pinpoint the exact geographic location of every individual, along with his state of physical and mental health. Any criminal offence will be easily uncovered with the help of a special program in the main computer. Besides, the social conditions which now foster crime will be absent. In return, the visitors plan to ask the government's permission to settle representatives of their civilization in sparsely inhabited areas, mainly in forests, as well as the right of people to exchange their individual garden plots for technologically equipped apartments and provision of lifetime care if they choose to do so. The governments will agree under the impression that they will still be in full control. A number of religious denominations will start preaching that the alien visitors are God's emissaries, since the aliens will not deny any of the religions existing on the earth. Religious leaders who do not believe in the aliens' divine perfection will find it impossible to stand up against the visitors, since they will be accepted by the majority of the citizens in each country that signs the treaty. All other countries will start seeking similar treaties of cooperation with the visitors. 9 years after the first landing on the earth, a new way of life will have been speedily inculcated into all countries on all the continents of the earth. All information media will broadcast the ever-advancing achievements in technology and social order. The majority of the population will glorify the emissaries of the mind of the universe as intellectually superior brethren, as deities in themselves. And not without justification, I remarked to Anastasia. There's nothing wrong in having no wars and crime on the earth. Everyone will be provided with an apartment, food and employment. Vladimir, do you not realise that once mankind accepts the terms of the aliens, they at the same time renounce their non-material divine self? In fact, it will self-destruct. All that is left will be material bodies. And every man, Vladimir, will come to more and more resemble a biological robot. And all the children of the earth will henceforth be born biological robots. But why? All people on the earth will be compelled to render daily service to those devices which outwardly serve them. All mankind will fall into a trap, surrendering their own freedom and that of their children for the sake of an artificial technological perfection. Before long, many Earth people will intuitively recognize their mistake and start ending their lives by suicide. Strange. What would they be lacking? Freedom, creativity, and the feelings that only co-creation with the divine creation can bring. And if the parliaments and governments of various countries are unwilling to sign treaties with the aliens, what then? Will they start destroying mankind? Then the alien minds will look for other ways to lead everybody into a trap. There is no sense in their annihilating mankind. After all, their goal is to understand the interrelationship among all earthly creations, and by what power reproduction is brought about. Nothing like that can exist without man. It is man who is the chief link in the chain of harmony of earthly creation, and the sun's rays are part of the energy and feelings that many people reproduce. With their present level of consciousness, today's Earth people pose no resistance to the visitors, and many Earthlings today are even trying to render them assistance. How so? Who among us is trying to help them? Does that mean there are traitors in our midst, working for them? They are working for them, but these people are not traitors. Their acquiescence in this comes about involuntarily. It is without malice or premeditation. The main reason is their own lack of faith in themselves and in the perfection of God's creations. Well, what's the connection here? It is simple. When man admits the thought that he is not a perfect creation, when he all at once begins to imagine that there are beings on other planets of superior intellect, he himself feeds them by his own thought. Man himself thereby belittles his own God-given power and attributes power to creations other than the divine. They have already learnt to gather the energy human thoughts and feelings can produce into a unified complex and are proud of that achievement. Look, and you will see in front of that group of aliens there is a container of glowing liquid which is being transformed back and forth between gaseous, liquid and solid states. They have no weapon stronger than what is concentrated in that small container. Later, they will distribute its whole content into a whole lot of small, shallow containers. One of the sides of the container will act as a special reflector. Each one of them will wear a similar device around his neck in the form of a medallion. All of the aliens you see sitting in front of you are wearing such devices right now. When a ray from this medallion is directed at a man, it may provoke in him feelings of fear, reverence, or excitement. And it can paralyze not only a person's will, but also his consciousness and his body. This ray contains thoughts of a multitude of people. People's thoughts that there is someone in the universe stronger than man. Stronger than man, God's creation. And these thoughts, when concentrated, can be turned against people themselves. So it turns out we ourselves give them power when we consider them mentally superior to ourselves. Yes, that is right. Mentally superior to ourselves means mentally superior to God. What's God got to do with it? We are his creations. When we believe that there are other, more perfect worlds in the universe, that means we are accepting ourselves as imperfect creations of God. Wow! And have they already accumulated a lot of such energy on the alien world? In the container standing in front of you, there is enough energy to overcome approximately 3/4 of all the minds on the earth and to take over people's feelings. That they consider way more than enough. Then the whole earthly civilization will begin to pay them obeisance, and their power will increase. So, is it impossible at this stage to do anything about it? It is possible, if we take a risk and do something they are not expecting. After all, a full complex of human feelings, even just one, is always stronger. And it is possible to accelerate thought to a speed unknown to those who have no feelings. And all the energy amassed in that container can be neutralized by the energy of another thought, which is brighter, more confident, and more perfect. And you, Anastasia, would you yourself be able to neutralize all the energy in that container? I could try, but I would have to bring my whole body here for that. Why? My complex of feelings will not be complete without my body. Matter is one of the planes of man's being. With it, man is stronger than the elements of the universe. So, go ahead. We need to break the container. And all at once, in front of me, I saw Anastasia in the flesh. She was dressed just as she had been in the forest, in a cardigan and skirt. She stood there barefoot on the floor, and then all at once started walking unhurriedly over to the aliens sitting in front of the container with the glowing liquid. I caught sight of her. No emotions showed themselves on the faces of these unfeeling beings. Only for a brief moment they remained motionless in their seats. A second later, everyone was astir. Suddenly, as if on command, they all rose and grasped hold of the medallions around their necks. All the medallions flashed with rays of light, all directed at the approaching figure of Anastasia. She stopped, lost her balance momentarily, took a small step backward, then stopped again. Giving a little stamp with her bare foot, she slowly and confidently moved forward again. The rays coming from the aliens' medallions got brighter and brighter as they joined together, concentrating on Anastasia. It looked as though it would take but a moment for them to reduce all the clothing on her to ashes. But Anastasia continued moving forward. All at once she stretched her hands out in front of her. Some of the rays reflected off the palms of her hands and were extinguished. Then the others started to go out. The aliens stood there stock still as before. Anastasia went over to the container, put her hands around it, stroked it with her palms, and whispered something to it. All at once, the liquid in the container became turbulent. Then its glow began to gradually fade, and before long there remained a practically colourless liquid with only a slight bluish tinge, much like ordinary water on the earth. Anastasia went over to a machine standing by the wall that looked something like a refrigerator. She pressed her hand against it, whispered something to it, and out came a shower of some kind of small coloured square tablets, which she caught in the upturned hem of her cardigan. Anastasia went over to the aliens, who were still standing dumbstruck as before, and held out one of the tablets to the one at the end. He stirred, as though about to hold out his hand, but stopped at once and began staring in the direction of the man who was standing in front of them all, probably their leader. And so there was Anastasia, standing before him for about half a minute, her hand outstretched. Then she went over and stood directly in front of the leader and held out a tablet for him. After a brief pause, the leader took the tablet and put it in his mouth. Anastasia then went around to each one in turn, and this time everyone calmly took a tablet from her and ate or swallowed it. Then she turned from them and came over toward me. She had got halfway to me when all at once she stopped and, turning toward the group of seated aliens, waved her hand at them, and several of the aliens got up from their seats and waved their hand back at her in response. When she reached my position, she said with a tired voice, "We need to go back. They have now taken the thought-accelerating tablets. Let them try to make sense of what has happened here." And then it was all over. I found myself lying on the grass as before, as though awakening from sleep. It seemed just a short time had passed, but my body felt rested, as after a deep, healthy sleep. But my head, inside me, everything felt as though it were boiling over, as though my thoughts were running in all directions at once. All the images I had seen on that other planet completely stayed with me. What was it? A dream? Hypnosis? Or everything at once? It still wasn't clear. To see what is actually happening on a planet other than the Earth, this was something I found impossible to believe. And I asked Anastasia, who was sitting beside me, what was it? A dream? Hypnosis? I seem to have remembered everything, and now my head feels absolutely chaotic. And she replied, "Vladimir, as for the power by which this vision of another planet appeared to you, take it any way you like. If you find the question disturbing, you can simply tell yourself you had a dream. Besides, all of it is not what is really important. What is important is the essence, the conclusions, and the sensations of this vision you saw. Think about that while I leave you for a while." "Yes, go on. I'll be thinking about it here on my own." Left alone, I began to ponder what I had seen. Naturally, I concluded that I had had some kind of hypnotic dream. After taking just a few steps, however, Anastasia suddenly turned and headed back in my direction. She took something out of the pocket of her cardigan and held out her open hand to me, and there I saw it, lying on her hand, a strange-looking tablet, the same kind I had seen on the other planet. "Take it, Vladimir. You need not be afraid to swallow it. On the planet you and I visited, they make these out of herbs from here on the Earth. For about 15 minutes it will help accelerate your thought, and you will be able to make sense of everything all the more quickly." I took the little tablet from her outstretched hand, and when Anastasia left, I ate it. So there's the 3 chapters. There are more chapters in the book, and like I said, there are more books. In fact, there are 10 books in all, and they are available as in English as electronic formats only these days, because all of the printed copies have been exhausted. There are very few left. There are some second hand which are selling for between $200 and $300 each, if you can get hold of them at all. But they are available as PDFs on numerous websites, and they are available in Kindle formats on Amazon.com. This was read to you by Solomon I. Breathart, March the 30th, 2026.